Every song on this list has something in common that nobody talks about. They were wrong about all of them. Radio programmers said a 6-minute song with no chorus would never work. Record label executives said a bass-driven funk track from a rock band was commercial suicide. A band of session musicians almost scrapped a track they considered an inside joke. A 19-year-old songwriter wrote a melody and thought nothing of it, then went to sleep. Every single one of those songs went on to sell over 10 million copies. Several of them crossed 20 million. One of them still generates millions of dollars every single year and shows no sign of stopping. Today, we are going through 15 of the best-selling rock songs ever recorded, not just the numbers, but the actual stories behind them. The real details: who wrote what in their sleep, who almost refused to release it, who got pushed by Michael Jackson, who accidentally created rock history while their casino burned down on the banks of Lake Geneva. These are the facts behind the records, and some of them are genuinely hard to believe. If this is your kind of content, real rock history, real numbers, real behind-the-scenes detail, subscribe and hit the bell right now. We do this every week. Let's get into the list. Number 15, another one bites the dust. Queen.
Let's go! She walks fairly down the street with the brim pulled way down low.
Freddie Mercury himself introduced this song in concert as a little disco experiment of ours. And that description is technically accurate and almost entirely misleading at the same time, because the real architect of Another One Bites the Dust wasn't Freddie Mercury. It was John Deacon, Queen's bassist, the quietest member of a band that was never exactly known for subtlety. Deacon built that riff after listening to Chic's Good Times, recorded it using a borrowed amplifier, and layered it with multiple levels of echo effects until the result landed somewhere between funk and rock in a space that hadn't really existed before. The song became the third single from the Game album.
Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust.
And it almost didn't happen at all, because the push to release it as a single didn't come from inside the band. It came from Michael Jackson. Jackson heard the track backstage in Los Angeles, walked up to the band, and told them directly that the song had to come out as a single. They listened. Another One Bites the Dust spent 3 consecutive weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, earned Queen an American Music Award for Favorite Rock Single, received a Grammy nomination, and went on to sell more than 12 million copies worldwide. Queen said they simply wanted to make a song people could dance to. Over 40 years later, that bass line is still used as a teaching example for bass players across every genre. Mission accomplished doesn't really cover it. Number 14, Back in Black, a C/DC. This was not just a single, it was a statement of survival. Back in Black was the second single from the album of the same name, and it served as the official recorded debut of Brian Johnson as AC/DC's new vocalist following the death of Bon Scott. The band went to Compass Point Studios in the Bahamas to record under producer Robert John Mutt Lange. And what came out of those sessions was built on a 3-chord riff developed during rehearsals. Simple, direct, and constructed entirely around raw impact. Brian Johnson wrote the lyrics not as a lament for Bon Scott, but as a tribute. Which is why the song opens with that church bell sound, a deliberate choice sitting somewhere between mourning and rebirth. The band didn't want a funeral, they wanted a relaunch. The song only reached number 37 on the Billboard chart in 1981. That fact has aged very badly. The single has now sold more than 13 million copies in the United States alone, while the Back in Black album has surpassed 26 million U.S. copies, 26 times platinum certification. The song appeared in Iron Man. It has been sampled repeatedly, including by the Beastie Boys, which prompted a public criticism from Angus Young about sampling without permission. What number 37 became is now a textbook case in how chart positions and cultural legacy have almost nothing to do with each other. Number 13, Wind of Change. Scorpions.
All over Moscow, down to Gonky Park.
Klaus Meine wrote this melody after performing at the Moscow Music Peace Festival in 1989. He wanted to capture a specific feeling, the sensation shared across the world at that particular moment in history that something enormous was shifting. The spirit of perestroika was in the air. The Berlin Wall was months away from coming down. And Meine sat with that experience and wrote a whistled melody that became one of the most recognizable opening sequences in rock history. Released as a single in 1991, Wind of Change sold more than 14 million copies and became so intertwined with the end of the Cold War that it effectively functioned as the unofficial soundtrack to the fall of communist Eastern Europe. The cultural impact was significant enough that years later, serious theories emerged, suggesting the CIA had actually commissioned the song as a tool of soft power to help accelerate the collapse of the Soviet system. Scorpions responded to that theory with smiles. They also acknowledged that the fact the theory exists at all proves something undeniable, that music, when it arrives at the right moment, can feel larger than the people who made it. Wind of Change became more than a hit. It became historical documentation in song form. Number 12, Living on a Prayer, Bon Jovi. Written by John Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora, and Desmond Child, Living on a Prayer was released at the end of 1986 and became the engine that drove Bon Jovi to the top of the charts for the first time. Heavy MTV rotation of the music video, featuring John Bon Jovi suspended from cables above an empty stage, pushed it to the band's first #1 position on the Billboard Hot 100. The signature element is Sambora's talkbox, that vocoder-processed guitar tone that makes the intro sound unlike anything else on rock radio at the time. But the structural decision that makes the song genuinely unusual is the chorus placement. It doesn't arrive until nearly the 3-minute mark. For a radio single, that is a significant gamble. When it lands, though, it lands completely. The song was built around Tommy and Gina, a fictional working-class couple, for the Slippery When Wet album, which became one of the defining commercial records of 1980s rock. In 2024, the Recording Industry Association of America certified Living on a Prayer as Diamond. More than 14 million units sold in the United States. That certification came nearly 4 decades after release, which tells you everything about the shelf life of the right chorus. Number 11, Africa, Toto O. This song almost didn't exist, and the people who made it didn't think it would matter if it did. David Paich was experimenting with a Yamaha CS80 synthesizer when the idea arrived, not through deliberate composition, but through accident. He developed it with drummer Jeff Porcaro, who built a rhythm pattern that sat between tribal percussion and polished soft rock, in a combination that was genuinely unlike anything else being made in that period. Guitarist Steve Lukather's reaction to the track was essentially a joke. He said, reportedly, that if the song became a hit, he would run naked down Hollywood Boulevard. Africa conquered the world. The famous line, "I bless the rains down in Africa," was drawn from Paich's childhood memories of National Geographic magazines and stories about missionary work he had heard growing up. A song built from synthesizer experiments, a tribal rhythm, and childhood geography lessons. On September 10, 2024, Africa was certified diamond in the United States, more than 15 million units sold. It wasn't even the lead single from the Toto 4 album. It was the last song recorded for the record, the one nobody expected. The inside joke that became a timeless classic, still racking up streams at a rate that would embarrass most current releases. We're through the first half of this list, and the numbers are about to get significantly larger. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed yet, hit that button now. This channel goes deep on rock history every single week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next on this list. Number 10, Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen released. October 31st, 1975, As the lead single from A Night at the Opera, Bohemian Rhapsody is the clearest example in rock history of a song that should not have worked and then permanently changed the rules. Nearly 6 minutes long, no conventional chorus, combines ballad, operatic passage, and hard rock in a structure that has no precedent in commercial radio. Every standard industry calculation said it was wrong. Record executives were skeptical. Radio programmers were reluctant. Then one radio station in the United Kingdom played the entire track. The phones didn't stop. The rest of the history writes itself. To record it, Queen used 5 different studios. The music video, 4 band members emerging from darkness against a black background, permanently changed how music was marketed and promoted, establishing a visual language that dominated the industry for the next 2 decades. The song has now sold more than 17 million copies worldwide. It experienced a major commercial revival following its use in the 1992 film Wayne's World, and then again after the 2018 biographical film of the same name, introducing it to generations who weren't born when it was recorded. Every time someone shouts Galileo in a car, they are participating in the legacy of a song that the industry said couldn't work. Freddie Mercury knew otherwise. Number 9. We Are the World, USA for Africa. Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson wrote this in a single night. The logistics of what came next are almost as impressive as the song itself. 45 artists gathered to record immediately after the American Music Awards ceremony in 1985. Producer Quincy Jones placed a sign on the studio door before anyone entered. It read, "Leave your ego at the door." The lineup included Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, and dozens of others, a density of commercial talent that has never been replicated in a single recording session before or since. The behind-the-scenes details are where this story gets real. Prince chose not to participate. Bob Dylan, reportedly uncertain about his vocal performance, was guided through the melody in real time by Stevie Wonder through his headphones, right there on the studio floor. The single sold more than 20 million copies worldwide and raised nearly $60 million for famine relief in Africa. It topped global charts, won 4 Grammy Awards, and established the template for the large-scale charity recording that dominated the decade. The final chorus remains one of the defining sonic images of 1980s popular music, proof that rock and pop, when pointed at something larger than commercial ambition, can operate as a genuinely unified force. Number 8. It's Now or Never. Elvis Presley. The origin of this song begins with Elvis Presley hearing an English-language version of the Neapolitan classic O Sole Mio, performed by Tony Martin. He was so taken with the melody that he commissioned new English lyrics from Wally Gold and Aaron Schroeder, recorded it on April 3, 1960, just weeks after returning from military service in Germany, and released it that July. The commercial response was immediate and, in the UK, historic even before the record was physically available. Legal clearance issues delayed the British release, but demand was so high in advance of the release date that the song had already received more than 1 million pre-orders before it reached shelves. When it finally came out, it entered the UK chart at number 1. Straight in at the top, something that almost never happened in that era. The song sold nearly 20 million copies globally. Its operatic vocal range and slower tempo marked a deliberate departure from Elvis's early rockabilly style, a signal that he was moving into a more mature musical phase after his military years. In 2005, 45 years after its original release, It's Now or Never was re-released in the UK and climbed back to number 1. When it comes to Elvis Presley, time appears to be genuinely irrelevant. Number 7. Rock Around the Clock, Bill Haley and His Comets. Recorded April 12, 1954 at Pythian Temple in New York City. Initial commercial response: almost nothing. The song landed quietly and seemed destined to disappear. Then, in 1955, it appeared in the film Blackboard Jungle. Everything changed. The Guinness World Records lists Rock Around the Clock as having surpassed 25 million copies sold, making it one of the best-selling vinyl singles in recorded history. Built on a 12-bar blues structure and driven by Danny Cedrone's electric guitar solo, the song became the document through which rock and roll entered the mainstream cultural conversation. Before this song, rock and roll was subcultural. After it, the conversation changed permanently. It reached number 1 in both the United States and the United Kingdom, returned to the charts multiple times during the 1960s and 1970s, and in 2018 was added to the U.S. Library of Congress National Recording Registry for lasting cultural significance. That's the full arc, from commercial silence in 1954 to federal cultural preservation in 2018. Few songs have traveled that distance. Number 6. Don't Stop Believin'. Journey released in October 1981 as the third single from Escape, written by Steve Perry, Jonathan Cain, and Neil Schon. Structurally unusual, the full chorus doesn't appear until near the end of the song, a decision that carries real commercial risk for a radio single. The gamble paid off at a scale nobody anticipated. In 2024, the RIAA certified Don't Stop Believin' as Double Diamond, more than 25 million units sold in the United States alone. Since 2017, it has held the position of best-selling digital song of the 20th century. The modern commercial trajectory of the song traces back to two specific television moments. In 2007, it played over the final scene of The Sopranos, a culturally detonating moment that reintroduced the track to an entire generation. In 2009, it appeared on Glee and reached another generation entirely. Since then, it has been a stadium anthem, a wedding staple, and one of the most performed karaoke songs on the planet. In 2022, it was added to the National Recording Registry, a song from 1981 still accumulating cultural certifications 40 years later. Number 5. Hey Jude. The Beatles. Paul McCartney wrote this in 1968 during one of the most turbulent internal periods the Beatles had experienced. The original title was Hey Jules, written as a message of comfort for Julian Lennon, John's son, while his parents went through divorce proceedings. McCartney felt Jude sounded stronger and easier to sing during recording, and the name stayed. The song runs more than 7 minutes. For a rock single in 1968, that length was nearly unprecedented. Radio stations were skeptical. The Ana Nana outro stretches for over 4 minutes at the end. Industry logic said it was too long, too indulgent, too risky for radio rotation. It topped the charts in the United States and across dozens of other countries. The Ana Nana section that programmers worried about became one of the most participatory moments in concert history. Tens of thousands of people singing a wordless melody together in arenas and stadiums for 5 decades and counting. Hey Jude remains one of the most successful singles in Beatles history, which places it, effectively, in a category of its own. Number 4. I Can't Get No. Satisfaction. The Rolling Stones. The most famous guitar riff in Rolling Stones history began in a half-asleep state. Keith Richards woke up in the middle of the night with a melody in his head. He grabbed the tape recorder he kept by his bed, recorded the riff, and went back to sleep. When he listened to the tape the next morning, he had his idea, followed by 40 minutes of himself snoring. The band developed the riff using a fuzz box, a distortion effect that gave the guitar a sound that rock radio hadn't heard before. Mick Jagger's lyrics framed the frustration of a young generation navigating the consumer culture of the 1960s, a world saturated with advertising, telling them what to want and who to be. Released in 1965, Satisfaction reached number 1 in the United States and across multiple other countries simultaneously. It became not just a commercial record, but a cultural symbol, the sound of a generation refusing to be satisfied with what was being offered. Today, the opening 4 notes are among the most instantly recognizable sounds in rock music. The riff that started on a bedside tape recorder is now permanently encoded in the architecture of the genre. Number 3. Hotel California. Eagles, from the first guitar notes, the listener is somewhere specific, a place that feels familiar and wrong at the same time. Don Henley, Glenn Frey, and Don Felder wrote Hotel California as a portrait of a particular world, the California music industry of the 1970s, its surface glamour and its concealed darkness. The hotel in the lyrics is not a building, it is a condition. Everything appears perfect. The feeling underneath is not. The track became a radio hit immediately upon release, driving the album of the same name to enormous commercial success. But the element that made it permanent is the dual guitar solo at the end, Felder and Joe Walsh playing interlocking lines in a sequence that became one of the most studied guitar moments in rock history. The closing line, "You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave," became one of the most quoted lyrics in American rock, attached to everything from addiction metaphors to political commentary to general existential unease. Hotel California is not just a successful song, it is a document of a specific cultural moment that somehow sounds timeless every time it plays. Number 2. Stairway to Heaven. Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, and Robert Plant wrote this during the recording of Led Zeppelin IV, and when it was finished, the band made a decision that defied every commercial logic of the era. They did not release it as a single. No single, no radio-friendly edit. The song would reach the public only through album play and live performance, and the public would have to come to it on its own terms. The public came in enormous numbers. Through radio play of the album track, through word of mouth, through live performances that became landmark events, Stairway to Heaven built a reputation organically that no promotional campaign could have manufactured. Page's guitar solo, building through the song's escalating structure, became the benchmark against which rock guitar solos have been measured for over 50 years. According to radio play statistics, Stairway to Heaven is one of the most frequently broadcast songs in the history of rock radio. It consistently ranks at or near the top of every greatest rock song survey ever conducted. A song never released as a commercial single became the defining commercial monument of an era. Number 1. Smoke on the Water, Deep Purple. The most famous guitar riff in rock history was written while the band watched a building burn. December 1971, Montreux, Switzerland. Deep Purple had traveled to the Casino de Montreux to record a new album using a mobile recording unit. Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention were performing at the venue the night the band arrived. During that show, a member of the audience fired a flare gun into the ceiling. The casino caught fire. The blaze consumed the entire venue, while the band watched from outside, the smoke rising across Lake Geneva in the winter air. Ritchie Blackmore looked at that image. He went back to his instrument and wrote the riff. 4 notes. The most replicated opening sequence in guitar history, used in guitar shops across the world as the default test riff, taught to beginners in music schools on every continent, recognizable to people who have never once considered themselves rock fans. Smoke on the Water didn't just become a hit, it became a rite of passage, the first riff millions of guitar players ever learned, the entry point through which an incalculable number of people first connected with rock music as something they wanted to participate in, not just listen to. A casino burned down. Deep Purple turned the smoke into a riff that has been playing continuously for over 50 years. 15 songs, a combined sales figure that runs well past 250 million copies. And behind every single one of them is a detail that the chart position doesn't tell you. A dream, an accident, a borrowed amplifier, a burning building, a tape recorder left running beside a bed. The numbers are remarkable. What's more remarkable is that almost none of these songs were made with certainty. They were made with instinct, and the industry was wrong about most of them, and the audience knew better. That's the actual story of rock music's greatest commercial records. Not that they were calculated, that they weren't, and they worked anyway. If you want the next level of this, 15 songs that didn't just sell records, but actually changed how music is made and heard, that video is ready and waiting. Click it now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it before you leave. Drop your comments below. Which of these songs has the memory attached to it for you? I read every single one. See you in the next one.